There is a silent punishment that follows certain minds, a punishment never written into law, never spoken aloud, yet enforced with ruthless consistency. It begins the moment you see too clearly, the moment patterns reveal themselves without effort, the moment motives feel obvious while others still call them coincidences. From that point forward, you are no longer merely intelligent. You are isolated, and the deeper your perception cuts, the further you drift from the common world of ordinary minds. You start to notice it early. Conversations feel slow, not because people are stupid, but because they are comfortable swimming on the surface. You, on the other hand, keep sinking. You hear what is said, but more importantly, you hear what is avoided. You watch smiles, but you register the tension beneath them. You sense outcomes long before others even realize a game is being played. And when you try to explain what you see, you are met with blank stares, polite nods, or worse, subtle resentment. This is the curse of intelligence. Not superiority, not arrogance, but distance. The world does not reward those who see too much. It rewards those who see what is convenient. Most people are not searching for truth, clarity, or understanding. They are searching for comfort. They want narratives that protect their identity, beliefs that justify their choices, and explanations that allow them to sleep at night. An intelligent mind threatens all of that by its mere presence. You don't have to say anything. You don't have to correct them. The fact that you see through illusions destabilizes those who live inside them. This is where the misunderstanding begins. You assume intelligence is a bridge, that seeing more allows you to guide, explain, elevate. But intelligence is not a bridge. It is a cliff. And once you step too far ahead, the gap becomes uncrossable. The average mind does not want to be dragged upward. It wants to remain validated, and when faced with someone who exposes contradictions, flaws, or uncomfortable truths, the response is rarely gratitude. It is defense. This is why intelligent individuals often feel a strange loneliness, even in crowds. You can be surrounded by people and still feel completely unseen, not because they ignore you, but because they cannot reach you. Your internal world moves faster, deeper, more strategically. You anticipate reactions while others are still reacting. You calculate consequences while others are intoxicated by impulse. Over time, this creates a dissonance so sharp that connection itself begins to feel impossible. Machiavelli understood this dynamic with brutal clarity. He recognized that most people are governed not by reason, but by appearance, emotion, and immediate benefit. They judge not by what is, but by what seems. And those who operate beyond this level must either learn to conceal their depth or suffer the consequences of exposure. Intelligence, when visible, invites hostility, not because it is evil, but because it disrupts hierarchy. The average mind survives by consensus. It draws safety from shared beliefs and mutual reinforcement. When someone challenges that equilibrium, even unintentionally, they are perceived as a threat, not intellectually, but emotionally. You become the uncomfortable mirror no one asked for, and mirrors, when they reflect too honestly, are often shattered. This is why speaking plainly rarely works. You think clarity will solve confusion. You think logic will override emotion. You think truth will liberate. But truth without timing, without disguise, without strategy, is interpreted as aggression. The intelligent mind makes a fatal error here. It assumes others value accuracy as much as it does. They don't. They value alignment, belonging, stability. And so you begin to censor yourself, not because you lack confidence, but because you've learned the cost of being fully seen. You learn to dull your language, soften your insights, or remain silent altogether. You start to realize that being understood is rarer than being admired, and admiration itself is dangerous because it often turns into envy the moment your insight exposes someone else's inadequacy. This is the first stage of the curse: isolation disguised as maturity. You tell yourself you're selective, that you simply prefer depth over noise. But beneath that justification lies a quiet grief. The grief of knowing that connection, true connection, requires mutual perception, and perception is unevenly distributed. The second stage is misinterpretation. People begin to assign motives to you that are not yours. Your silence becomes arrogance. Your caution becomes manipulation. Your foresight becomes coldness. You are accused not because of what you do, but because of what you represent. You remind them of what they do not see, and that reminder is intolerable. This is where Machiavellian realism cuts deepest. He knew that virtue, when misunderstood, becomes weakness. Intelligence, when unmasked, becomes vulnerability. The world does not protect those who operate several moves ahead. It tries to pull them back into the same fog everyone else inhabits. And if that fails, it seeks to punish them for refusing to be blind. You begin to notice how often people mistake simplicity for sincerity, how confidently they trust those who speak in absolutes, even when those absolutes are false. Meanwhile, your nuanced understanding is dismissed as overthinking. Your caution is labeled fear. Your restraint is called passivity. This is not accidental. The average mind is uncomfortable with complexity because complexity demands responsibility. To see more is to carry more doubt, more awareness, more restraint, and restraint is invisible to those who equate action with strength. They don't see the battles you avoid, the impulses you control, the chaos you anticipate. They only see what you do not do, and they judge you for it. Over time creates a dangerous temptation, the temptation to simplify yourself, to become palatable, to trade depth for acceptance. But Machiavelli would warn you against this illusion. Appearing average does not grant safety, it only erodes authority. The world does not respect what it does not fear or admire, and the moment you betray your own perception to blend in, you lose the only advantage you truly possess. This is where intelligence must learn discipline, not openness, not honesty, but strategy. You cannot force understanding. You cannot educate those who are committed to misunderstanding you. You cannot awaken those who are asleep by choice. The curse is not that you are intelligent. The curse is believing intelligence alone is enough to navigate a world built on illusion. The intelligent mind must become selective, not in who it speaks to, but in what it reveals. Truth is a weapon, and like any weapon, it must be sheathed until the moment demands it. Machiavelli understood that power does not lie in being right, but in being effective. And effectiveness often requires restraint that feels like self-betrayal until you understand the game being played. This is why the intelligent often feel morally conflicted. You see how easily people are influenced, how narratives can be shaped, how perception outweighs reality, and you wonder whether using that knowledge makes you no better than those who deceive. But Machiavelli would argue that refusing to acknowledge the rules does not exempt you from them. It only makes you their victim. The tragedy is that the intelligent seek connection through honesty, while the world operates through performance. This mismatch creates endless frustration. You speak to be understood. Others speak to be affirmed. You analyze to clarify. Others interpret to protect themselves. And so, the distance grows, not because you are unwilling to connect, but because you are playing a different game entirely. Eventually, you learn that most people do. You learn not want to see the truth. They want to feel right. They want reassurance that their instincts are valid, their choices justified, their worldview intact. Intelligence threatens that equilibrium, not by attacking it, but by existing beyond it. This is the moment where many intelligent individuals retreat inward. They become observers rather than participants, strategists rather than collaborators. They stop expecting understanding and start expecting resistance. And while this withdrawal protects them, it also deepens the sense of exile. You are no longer surprised by misunderstanding, but you are still affected by it. And yet, within this curse lies a hidden power, the power of invisibility, the power of foresight, the power of patience. When you accept that you cannot connect with average minds on your level, you stop trying to drag them upward and start positioning yourself above the chaos. You begin to see the world not as a place of shared truth, but as a battlefield of perceptions. Machiavelli did not mourn this reality. He adapted to it. He understood that those who see clearly must move quietly, that those who think deeply must act selectively, and that those cursed with intelligence must learn when to speak, when to remain silent, and when to let others underestimate them completely. Because underestimation is not an insult, it is camouflage. When people underestimate you, they reveal more than they realize. They expose the narrow range of their perception, the shallow metrics by which they judge value. They measure intelligence by loudness, confidence by dominance, wisdom by popularity. And because you do not perform intelligence the way they expect, they conclude it is absent. This is where the intelligent mind gains its first real advantage, not by proving itself, but by remaining unseen. Machiavelli understood that visibility is dangerous. The moment others recognize your depth, they begin to calculate against it. They test you. They resist you. They seek to neutralize what they cannot control. But when they believe you are harmless, average, or even naive, they drop their guard. They speak freely. They act impulsively. They reveal intentions without realizing it. And you, observing quietly, gather more information in silence than they could ever extract through interrogation. This is the paradox of intelligence. The more openly you display it, the less effective it becomes. The more subtly you wield it, the more power it grants you. But this requires something most intelligent people struggle with early on: restraint of ego. Not arrogance, but the ego of being understood. The desire to be recognized for what you are. The craving to finally hear someone say, "I see what you see." That desire, if indulged indiscriminately, will betray you. Because the average mind does not want to see what you see. It wants to feel superior, secure, or at least equal. When confronted with someone whose perception surpasses theirs, they instinctively seek balance, sometimes through dismissal, sometimes through mockery, sometimes through moral judgment. They will accuse you of overthinking, of being detached, of lacking empathy, when in reality you see too much to afford emotional indulgence. This is where loneliness sharpens. Not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being surrounded by people who speak a language you understand, yet use it to say nothing. Conversations revolve around surface-level conflicts, recycled opinions, borrowed outrage. You try to engage, to deepen the exchange, but the moment complexity enters, interest fades. The room grows uncomfortable. You feel it instantly, so you retreat. Again. Over time, this repetition conditions you. You begin to expect disconnection. You stop initiating depth. You learn to mirror just enough to pass through social spaces without friction. And while this adaptation protects you, it also fragments you. Parts of your mind remain unused in most interactions. You become a reduced version of yourself, not because you lack depth, but because depth has no place to land. Machiavelli would argue that this fragmentation is not a flaw, but a skill. The ability to present only what is necessary, to withhold the rest, to understand that transparency is not virtue, but vulnerability. The intelligent individual who survives does not insist on authenticity in every moment. They understand context. They understand power. They understand that truth, revealed without strategy, is not noble. It is reckless. This does not mean deception for its own sake. It means discernment, knowing that not every mind is capable of handling what you see, that some truths destabilize rather than enlighten, that some people, when shown the machinery behind their beliefs, do not thank the engineer. They burn the blueprint. This is why the intelligent often feel misunderstood, even when they are praised. Compliments land strangely. You are admired for traits you consider superficial. You are criticized for qualities you know are necessary. People call you calm when you are calculating. They call you cold when you are restrained. They call you lucky when you are prepared. And correcting them feels pointless, because understanding is not what they are seeking. This creates a subtle bitterness if left unchecked, a quiet contempt for mediocrity, a dangerous belief that isolation equals superiority. Machiavelli would warn against this trap. Contempt blinds. It replaces clarity with ego. And ego, especially intellectual ego, is the fastest way to lose power. The intelligent must remember that average minds are not enemies. They are the terrain. The world is not designed for brilliance. It is designed for functionality. Systems reward predictability, not insight. Stability, not truth. Those who think deeply often clash with institutions, not because they are wrong, but because they are inconvenient. They ask questions that slow processes. They see flaws others depend on ignoring. And so they are sidelined, not through open hostility, but through subtle exclusion. You see this in workplaces, in social groups, in families. The intelligent child is told to stop asking questions. The intelligent employee is told to follow procedure. The intelligent friend is told they are making things complicated. Over and over, the message is the same. Do not disrupt the narrative. Do not expose the cracks. Do not remind us that what we are building is fragile. Eventually, you face a choice: to dull yourself enough to belong, or to sharpen yourself enough to stand alone. Neither path is painless, but only one preserves your perception. Machiavelli would never advise you to sacrifice your advantage for comfort. He would tell you that comfort is the currency of the controlled. Standing alone does not mean isolating completely. It means recalibrating your expectations, accepting that deep connection will be rare, that most interactions will be transactional, performative, or superficial, and that this is not a failure of yours, but a structural reality. Once you accept this, something shifts. You stop seeking validation from those incapable of offering it. This is where intelligence becomes quieter, colder, more precise. You listen more than you speak. You observe patterns instead of reacting to events. You begin to see how predictable most behavior is once you remove the illusion of individuality. People repeat cycles. They defend identities. They rationalize impulses. And because you see this, you can anticipate outcomes with unsettling accuracy. This foresight further alienates you. People accuse you of pessimism when you are simply realistic. They say you are cynical when you are cautious. They claim you lack faith when you lack delusion. And you realize that optimism is often just socially acceptable denial, a refusal to acknowledge uncomfortable probabilities. Machiavelli never mistook hope for strategy. He understood that those who rely on goodwill alone are destroyed by those who understand ambition. Intelligence strips away comforting myths. It shows you that most alliances are temporary, most loyalty conditional, most morality situational. This knowledge is heavy. It makes innocence impossible to recover. And yet, this clarity is not meant to harden you into cruelty. It is meant to sharpen you into precision, to teach you when to engage and when to withdraw, when to reveal and when to conceal, when to act and when to wait. The intelligent mind must master timing above all else. Timing is what average minds ignore. They act when they feel. They speak when they react. They commit before they calculate. This impulsivity creates chaos, but it also creates opportunity. Those who wait, who watch, who understand the rhythm beneath the noise, move when resistance is weakest. This is why intelligent individuals often appear passive until suddenly they are not. People are shocked when you act decisively because they mistook your silence for inaction. They did not realize you were mapping the terrain, measuring risk, preparing contingencies. And when you finally move, it seems effortless, almost unfair. This moment reveals the final cruelty of the curse. When your intelligence finally manifests in results, people retroactively rewrite your story. They say it was obvious, that you were always destined for it, that it was luck, anything but acknowledgement of the unseen discipline, restraint, and isolation that preceded it. By then, you no longer seek their understanding. You understand something far more important. That connection is not about being seen by everyone. It is about being seen by the few who can perceive at your depth. And those minds are rare, so rare that you may encounter only a handful in a lifetime. Machiavelli would say that rarity is not a tragedy. It is a filter. It protects power from dilution. It ensures that when connection does occur, it is not based on comfort, but on mutual clarity, on shared perception, rather than shared illusion. Until then, you walk a solitary path, not because you are above others, but because you are ahead. And being ahead means enduring the silence, the misunderstanding, the projection. It means accepting that most will never meet you where you are, and that dragging them there only exhausts you. The curse of intelligence is not that you cannot connect. It is that connection requires patience, camouflage, and restraint that feels unnatural to a mind that sees so clearly. And once you accept this, once you stop demanding understanding from those who cannot give it, intelligence stops feeling like a burden and starts feeling like what it truly is, a quiet, dangerous advantage that waits for the moment when perception becomes power.